Monday,
Go ahead.
Tuesday, and she'll go Friday.
Oh, Friday, yeah.
And
Well, she went Monday for her evaluation. I
and then
took
she
her
went
Tuesday.
And then,
then-
of course, she had to go to the doctor today, so she says she's going back Friday, and then next
We're
week she'll probably.
We are
come
live.
Monday.
I figured Luke might have joined you tonight.
Well,
so-
I asked him.
I told her, you know.
He's on break.
I could-
He's
I
like,
know,
he was
They're
They're going with Grandma to spend the night.
Then I was.
You know,
They're packed on.
I had forgot that was kind of, you know, break time, but we have been out so much, you know, for so long. I hated not. I'm like, the kids are fine. That, you know, it gives you opportunity to come and join in. And I thought, you know, if there were any of the youth that were around, you know, that they're more than welcome. Even, you know, some of the older
Well,
kids
she
if
had
they
me
want
tell
to.
me he would like mine,
So,
and I was wondering.
But I just hated not
She's so
to
used to
have
getting in that tub
Bible
with so
study
much
nights.
fire
It's-
up.
Had a
I
whole,
hoped
a
you
whole
would.
year.
I hoped you would.
Yeah. Well, somebody mentioned to me, I was like, I was like, well, it is breaks. I guess when you don't go anywhere on break, you actually have one yourself. You don't
She
really
got
think
in, but
about
she
it.
had,
So.
I told her it's
But,
okay. I had to move the seat back,
Good.
and she put her rear end in first. and it
But I was I'm gonna ask a question before we get into our prayer list. Y'all go ahead. I want to ask a question, okay? And you can be as honest as you want to be. Overall, this is your question, all right? We're going to break it down. Overall, how did you think our Sunday services went? So we go the sunrise service, the breakfast afterwards, and then our worship service. So just kind of overall, how did you think that the sunrise service went?
10 out of 10.
Hello.
Easter Sunday morning. The breakfast about 12 out of 10.
No, I thought it went really
All day.
great.
All day.
Of course, and it was nice that we could do it, and I think that's what really, you know, it was so great to have to be back somewhat to normal.
Yeah,
But
it felt,
I think it
felt
all went-
normal. It felt
Yeah.
good.
I thought it went.
What about
Great.
attendance? Because I really don't have anything to measure it by or gauge it by.
Well, see, we didn't either, because usually we're
Slime on the
combined
window, hold
with
the window.
Methodist
Oh,
Church.
you'll see if I can figure out how
See
to
if
make
you can
that.
figure out.
I thought we might get some of them, but
Well, they had it.
Oh, they had it
had
too?
one because I thought so
I didn't
too.
know
'cause-
they
The Liberty
did.
had one,
I
I
didn't
know.
know they had one.
And,
Okay.
yeah, I guess
Okay.
they just didn't want to get too many, or, you know, it's why they decided to do
Yeah,
their
well,
own.
it's probably better.
I hope we don't not go back to community. You know, we
that
always
was-
really enjoyed it.
that was always
And when I was a kid, there would be so many at the sunrise services. We'd have to put chairs out. I mean, it used to really be, but now
Well,
it's
and
not. It's
it hit on
not.
spring break too.
Mhm.
It hit
But,
on the beginning of spring break
but
as
it's
well.
just not anymore.
Yeah.
People don't.
That's kind of the world we live in now, and I don't know. What the answer to that is, because it's just kind of the trend now.
Did you see the survey? I remember which the church attendance was less than half of Americans now were church members somewhere.
It-
For the first time ever, it dropped below 50%. It's like 48% of
The
people.
trend now, it's not the millennials, but it's Generation Z is the largest generation now group in the United States. And when they're asked their affiliation, like, religious affiliation, they check the none box. And that's the largest group in the United States. That's the trend. They're the group that's, there's never been, the internet, the cell phone, it's always been a part of their life and everything. And now they don't affiliate with anything. They're not atheists, they're not agnostic, they're not, they check none. They have no background whatsoever. And that's the large group right now. And so that's kind of,
I guess that's like Scott and Sydney's age.
mm-hmm.
That's 25,
Yep.
around 20, 30, I guess.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of generation. They got the millennial, Gen X,
Yeah, I
the
get
millennials,
lost.
and I think then that next one. So it's kind of that. Yeah, probably 25, 24 and under. But that's the largest group. So that's, we're asking Earl Marshall, we're kind of just doing an overall, what did you think about our services? And we're looking at the sunrise service and kind of just evaluating. And is there any, what can we, how could we improve? How can we make it better? I mean, what did you think were some like strong points? And what's some ways that we could maybe possibly make it better?
I thought it was good.
All right.
I just thought it was good. I didn't see anything negative, you know.
Sherry and Gary really thought it was nice, and they're my family.
I'm so glad that they got to come.
Yeah.
And be
Me
with
too.
us.
They thought it was really good. They complimented it.
I think our breakfast. I think most everybody stayed for breakfast. I don't know. Some people may have snuck out the front door, but I think we had everybody around the tables, even in there. I think for the most part, folks. So our worship service. How about our resurrection service as a whole?
I liked it.
Considering how many we've been having, we had a pretty fair group, and I thought the service was great, wonderful.
Susie's brother said he'd heard you paint upside down. He said, I was trying to figure out how he's gonna paint upside down when you got all these words on it.
See, that's the whole thing is people expect that. So it's more, the whole upside down thing came out of me it was out of my own not to be bored. It's really because people ask me, it's like, well, how did you start painting upside down? It's like, well, when I first started doing this, I had one painting. And everywhere I went, I did that one painting. And I thought, I'm going to kind of get tired of painting this one painting, so how can I make it not boring for me? So I'm like, I'll do it upside down. And so when I did it upside down, I started flipping it. People are like, oh, so I'm like, well, now I can't go back. So the bigger challenge is now painting one right side up if people can't. Because, people that have seen me before, they're like, oh, it's upside down. They start turning their head like, wrong.
Yeah, I kept waiting for you to do that.
There you go. Just when you think you got it, there you go. So that's kind of how that all came about. Well, I was excited all day. I just thought it was, I don't know, more than anything, I think from where we were at last year to this Sunday. To me, that just kind of made it even more special. Just, to be together and kind of look back at that. And so, I think we always need to evaluate how we do things. And I think we need to kind of mix it up. I think we need to try new things. They may work, they may not work. And if they don't work, it's okay.
Something different.
You just do something different. And you say, hey, that doesn't work. But, if you do something like, wow, that was really impactful and that really enhanced worship. And I'll give you a great example is when Jeff had 4 or 5 people join him on the stage kind of, to sing that Sunday. I was just like, wow, what a difference that made. It was just, I think it enhanced worship, and it was so good. And I thought anything that we can do to enhance worship. Also, anything that we can do to get more people involved in worship. I think that's just a wonderful thing. And so I like that. So, very good. I just wanted to kind of get some opinions and kind of thoughts on how everybody went. The bacon was good. The bacon, I got to the point where I couldn't eat anymore. And the biscuits and gravy, that's always a winner. But I think we had plenty of food. I think we did well on it. I think there might still be some stuff in the refrigerator.
Yeah, for a light breakfast. Yeah.
Listen, I knew deep down in the depths of my very being it was going to be, I'm like, there's going to be some major thing brought in.
No Baptist church in
Yeah,
the world to
that's
serve
just
a
like-
light breakfast.
I don't know, and you're kind of like, it's kind of like, I guess out of just, you don't want to put people out. You don't want to say, we just want you to cook all morning because you got to be here at 6 o'clock in the morning anyway. So I think just trying to be, make it easy on everybody. And but I'm not gonna lie. When I saw that crock pot of gravy, I wasn't sad. I wasn't mad either. I was like, this is all right. So we could, every Sunday.
It's always that here. If we had a potluck, you don't
Yeah.
bring a pot, you bring a
There's-
meal.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. But it was good to be together. It was good to sit around the tables and just talk and laugh and eat. And I just thought that was, we hadn't had that in a while. I just kind of thought that was special. So
I was glad that Lee was here
I
for
was
this kind of
too.
service,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
hoping, he said, I need to get back, but said, I hate to be like them people that come once a year on Sunday and on Easter and Mother's Day. And I
Don't
said,
be that.
he said, so I'll come on sunrise and not everybody think about that.
Yeah.
Maybe he'll be back.
I hope he felt welcome and,
Oh, he
and
did.
enjoyed it. I
This
think
is
he
home.
enjoyed himself
Been
because
home.
he came back and ate breakfast
Yeah,
and hung out. It was good. It was good to meet him and see him.
I got my hug.
He's always ready to give hugs.
Yes.
Well, let's look over our prayer list. Thank you for sharing. It just helps moving forward and planning, and the folks that are on there.
James said you can take Jean off,
I'm just down bloodline through her.
Alright.
Emily got good.
I think Betty's pretty much on the mend.
Yeah, it was good seeing her Sunday.
I think I could take her off.
I was in my office and I heard somebody talking. I was like, I recognize that voice. The voice sounds familiar. I'm like, and then she walked by and stuck her head in the door. And I was like, Miss Betty. Anybody talk to Miss Hazel? Anything?
Mary Lou has talked to her this week. It's everything, I guess, is about the
About
same.
the same. Okay.
She calls Mary Lou.
We have we have several. Earl, is that your family, Georgia?
No.
Different. Okay. I saw. I meant to ask you that the other day,
But I kept all 3 of her kids, and she does my hair. She's family.
we do have those families that have lost loved ones. I don't know. It seems like we've had 2 or 3 at the top of our list. Regularly that we've lost folks or known somebody in the community that we've lost. And Miss Gail, update on Miss Gail?
She started her physical therapy up here at Patrick's this week, and she did okay. And she went back to the doctor today, but I haven't talked to her since she got home from the doctor. But she's moving along. It's just slower this time, and she's having a lot more pain this time, but she's doing okay.
Do we have any additions?
Who is I missed out, but who is Kelly Walker?
Who?
David Walker.
Scott Walker.
Yeah.
Scott Walker builds homes.
Tammy
Paducah.
Summers mentioned her.
Yeah.
I know she's been on there a long time.
She went to get treatment, but I'm not sure.
They're from Paducah. He's actually building a house. Sherry and I was out walking the other night, and his sign is they're building a house down the road. And I was like, and I think, was she on the school board? I haven't heard any updates. Maybe Tammy's watching. She can give us an update. I just got anybody, Lana, have you checked the live feed? I just got a text from Sarah. She said it was cutting in and out. I'm not sure.
It's probably hurting.
Well, with the storm and the wind, I mean, it could be, is it still? Susie, can you see the screen? Back there's a little red light still
I'm
on.
saying,
Oh,
I see you.
okay.
is that him? Okay.
I see you.
All right. So do we have any additions? We good?
They said they can't hear real good.
Sit down and be quiet.
I mean, it's right there. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
the microphones, they might need to turn their volume
Come
up.
on over here, we can hear real well here.
That's right. We got the pink table right here, and part of the blue.
They're not
We're
very
still-
far, just tell them go on over.
Right now, Glenn thinks she's in the hospital,
You think?
and, but, you know, I guess it's working for now, you know.
Where is he at, Susie?
Stone Creek, I'll have to get his
Yeah.
address from Angie.
Where is that?
Stone, it's, you, like if you're going to Bible Baptist, you go
Okay,
down.
so that's the one. It used to be.
You go-
Well, it used to be several things. Legacy.
Yeah, it was something, yeah,
It was-
I think that
okay,
was
okay.
it.
Bible Baptist,
Heart, yeah.
Well, Oaks Baptist.
Heartland.
Heartland,
Over-
yeah, I
Okay.
still call it
Highway
Bible
there.
Baptist, Heartland.
Yeah, I see what you're talking
Yeah.
about now.
Yeah.
Across from PC Western.
Yeah, I know
Heartland
where.
that originally was Bible Baptist.
Yeah, I remember. I know where it's at now. Yeah. I didn't know it had changed names. It's been several things. We used to take youth there and do some outreach and stuff because it was close by. So, well, all right. We will go and pray. Michael, would you lead us in prayer tonight, please?
Father God, we're just grateful that we can gather here in your house again, Lord, that we're able to be here, and just ask that you would be with those that we've brought up for prayer. God, you know the individual needs for everyone, every situation, Lord. You know all the unspoken requests that we have, things that are too personal to bring up or to mention. Lord, we just ask you to be with this church, help us to continue to grow and to reach out. Be with all of us here, be with all those that are at home watching. Just hold us close and help us to learn your word. Be with us as we leave tonight and keep us safe. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. Well, tonight, if you have your handout and notes, you go ahead and flip to Exodus chapter 5, and we will begin there. We have journeyed to the point where Moses has finally got an audience with Pharaoh, and I'm going to read. Let's see. I'm going to read down through verse 21, chapter 5. Afterwards, Moses and Aaron went and said to Pharaoh, "Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, let my people go, that they may hold a feast to me in the wilderness." But Pharaoh said, "Who is the Lord, that I should obey his voice and let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, and moreover, I will not let Israel go." And then they said, "The God of the Hebrews has met with us. Please let us go a 3 days journey into the wilderness, that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God, lest he fall upon us with pestilence or with the sword." But the king of Egypt said to them, "Moses and Aaron, why do you take the people away from their work? Get back to your burdens." And Pharaoh said, "Behold, the people of the land are now many, and you make them rest from their burdens." And the same day Pharaoh commanded the taskmaster of the people and their foreman, "You shall no longer give the people straw to make bricks, as in the past. Let them go and gather straw for themselves. But the number of the brick that they made in the past you shall impose on them. You shall by no means reduce it, for they are idle. Therefore they cry, 'Let us go and offer sacrifice to our God.' Let heavier work be laid on the men, that they may labor at it and pay no regard to lying words." So the taskmasters and the foremen of the people went out and said to the people, "Thus says Pharaoh, I will not give you straw. Go and get your straw yourselves wherever you can find it, but your work will not be reduced in the least. So the people were scattered throughout all the land of Egypt to gather stubble for straw. And the taskmasters were urgent, saying, complete your work, your daily task each day, as when there was straw. And the foremen of the people of Israel, whom Pharaoh's taskmasters had set over them, were beaten and were asked, why have you not done all your task of making bricks today and yesterday as in the past? Then the foreman of the people of Israel came and cried to Pharaoh, why do you treat your servants like this? No straw is given to your servants, yet they say to us, make bricks. And behold, your servants are beaten, but the fault is in your own people. But he said, you are idle, you are idle. That is why you say, let us go and sacrifice to the Lord. Go now and work. No straw will be given you, that you must still deliver the same number of bricks. Whenever I read that, I always hear that in the voice of Yul Brynner from the Ten Commandments movie. It's kind of like that's Moses', that's Pharaoh's voice, right? That's what he really sounds like. I know. The foremen of the people of Israel saw that they were in trouble when they said, you shall by no means reduce your number of bricks, your daily task each day. They met Moses and Aaron, who were waiting for them as they came out from Pharaoh. And they said to them, the Lord look on you and judge, because you have made us stink or reek in the sight of Pharaoh and his servants, and have put a sword in their hand to kill us. So we'll kind of stop there, because this is the first appearance before Pharaoh. So Moses and Aaron went, and they asked Pharaoh, they said, thus saith the Lord, the God of Israel, let my people go, that they may hold a feast to me in the wilderness. And here's Pharaoh's response. Who is this God? Who is this God? And we kind of look at that question sometime, and we think, well, where's he been? But that's really not, it's not a question that he's being smart aleck or sarcastic or anything like that. It's a reasonable question, because Pharaoh was polytheistic. Okay? That meant he worshiped multiple gods. Who are you talking about? I don't recognize that name. I go down the list of gods and goddesses, and I don't really recognize that God. So who is this God? I don't know this God. Well, the truth is, by the time that God's finished, he's going to know. That's one of the purposes of the plagues, because Pharaoh, in essence, to the people of Egypt, he was also on the list of gods. He was worshipped as a god, and he wanted that. But his question was not like, he wasn't just making fun of Moses. He's like, who is this God? I don't recognize that name. And what about him? And so they asked to go on a 3-day journey. And I always find that puzzling, because they want to be gone forever. More than 3 days. They want to leave. And so why 3 days journey? And I'm so glad that you asked that question. So why 3 days journey when they wanted to leave completely? In chapter 3, verse 18, it says, God's talking to Moses. It says, let us go on a 3 days journey. But in chapter 5, verse 3, we read, let us go on a 3-day journey, or else he may strike us with plague or by sword. Well, in Eastern societies, they use gentle, suggestive, and limited ways to make in request, as opposed to coming right out and asking for what they wanted. I'll give you an example today. Would you please hand me the remote control? Okay, that's a kind of a gentle, nice way of saying, hand me the remote control because I want to control what we're watching on TV. And this is another one. How much money do you have on you? Translates, I'm planning to borrow some money from you. Mm-hmm. My dad always used to say, he'd go to his dad and say, Dad, can I have a nickel? And he'd say, what? He said, can I have a quarter? And he'd say, shut up, son, I heard you the first time, right? It's kind of like, Dad, you kids, like, how much money do you have on you? Well, they're getting ready to act, instead of saying, can I borrow $10? You know, it's just kind of like that subtle way.
They don't want to undercut themselves.
That's right. That's right. Because you know they might say, well, here's 20. You know, you only ask for 10. But that's kind of the way. It's a simple, rather than go and say, let us leave forever, Pharaoh. Let us go on a 3 days journey. The time requested is minuscule compared to the time actually expected. 3 days journey in the ancient world meant a major trip with formal consequences. Translated to Pharaoh, we want to leave Egypt for as long as we choose. So that's kind of, I always thought that was interesting because I'm like, Moses, you know you're not going to go 3 days and come back. I'm like, the plan is to go to the promised land. That's right, you know. And so that's why 3 days journey. So with that,
they wanted a head start, and that was the best. I just figured the best he thought he could hope for was a head start. So if they asked for 3 days, that'd give them at least 3 days to run, or maybe 6 days to run, 3 to get there, 3 to not come back, and then Pharaoh's on the way after
right.
us. So.
Well, so Pharaoh's response was, well, if you've got time to sit around and think about worshiping and sacrificing, you're too idle. So in order to make the bricks, they make the brick with straw. He's just saying, you know, if you have time to loaf, then you have time to gather your own straw. We're not going to provide it for you. But in addition, you have to produce the same quota of bricks. You know, we provided the straw for you. Well, if you can sit around and think about going on a feast, you know, worshiping God, then you got too much time on your hands, so you gather your own straw, but your quota of brick, the production must not decrease. Now, straw, what was the straw used for? Well, it's like rebar. It's for reinforcement. And I've seen them make mud bricks. You know, they build kind of mud huts and stuff like that. And they have like a little mold. And they pack it in there, and they pack the straw in there with it, and they set it out in the sun, and the sun bakes it. And it kind of holds the brick together. So it did the same thing for ancient bricks as rebar does for strengthening masonry. The sun dries it rather than exclusive kiln baking. And so, you know, they do have kilns and everything, but this was the way that they did that. The use of straw was essential. It was like the key ingredient to the brick. And up to this point, the Egyptians had been furnishing the straw. But they could not get the straw or grow straw. But they had to look for stubble, which the stubble is the very short remaining stalk of plants after harvesting. It is the bit between the root and where the reaping sickle cut the plant. So it's not like, hey, we're just going to go out, there's a whole field of straw right there. Straw had already been harvested. So we're looking at nubbins. And they had to get that. And so the people's response was, we're angry with Moses and Aaron. It's unique. You had the taskmasters, and then you had the foremans. Well, the foremans were Israelites. And it's interesting that the foremans, when they got mad, for some reason, they thought because they were foremans that Pharaoh was their friend. So when they were getting beat by the taskmasters because the brick quota was down, they didn't go to Moses and Aaron. They didn't go to God. They went to Pharaoh. And they're like, why are you doing this, Pharaoh? They went to Pharaoh instead of God. They blamed Moses and Aaron. And in essence, what they were doing is they were lashing out at leadership. And so they found out what Pharaoh really thought about them. It's kind of, you know, you see like TV shows, like there's an office and there's always that one guy that's always like trying to kiss up to the boss and everything and always do these extra things. And he thinks he's like really, really good friends with the boss, and then he might get laid off or fired because he's like, you know, I'm really in with the boss, and he's not. That's kind of that whole thing. They're like, you know, why is this happening? And so they go back to Aaron and Aaron and Moses meet them and says, the Lord look on you and judge because you have made a stink in the sight of Pharaoh, and his servants have put a sword in their hand to kill us. It's like, because of you, they're going to kill us. It's your fault, Moses. It's your fault, Aaron. And then we find that The next one is Moses' complaint. We'll look at on down through 23, verses 22 and 23, finish up that chapter. Then Moses turned to the Lord and said, "O Lord, why have you done evil to this people? Why did you ever send me? For since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has done evil to this people, and you have not delivered your people at all." What did God specifically tell Moses in the beginning was going to happen? He says, "You're going to go deliver this message, but I'm going to do what?
Turn them against you.
Harden their heart." And he's not going to let them go. And church, listen, we can kind of, this whole period of Moses, this, pre-Red Sea Moses, we can say, well, gosh, that whole burning bush thing and all this thing, and it would be easy to come down hard on Moses. But how many times, I think about how many times do I bail when it gets tough? God, this is hard, and I just want to go home, and I just don't want to be in that spot, or I just don't want to do that ministry, or I don't want to do that task, because ministry's hard. There's nothing easy about ministry at all. There's nothing easy. I mean, loving on people and serving people and trying to encourage people and help people and be involved in people's lives. Lives are messy and complicated, and it's hard. And so that's the first thing. It's like, why did you ever send me, God? It's like, and so we find God's response in verse 1 through 8. And this is more covenant language. But the Lord said to Moses, "Now you shall see what I will do to Pharaoh. For with a strong hand he will send them out, and with a strong hand he will drive them out of his land." He's like, Moses, just be patient. You just hang in there, and you're about to see something that you will never, you can't even imagine what I'm getting ready to do. And when he does send you out, it's going to be, I'm going to crush him. And he's going to demand that you leave. And God spoke to Moses and said to him, "I am the Lord." There's the I am again. "I appeared to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob as God Almighty. But by my name, the Lord, I did not make myself known to them. I also established my covenant with them to give them the land of Canaan, the land in which they lived as sojourners. Moreover, I have heard the groaning of the people of Israel, whom the Egyptians hold as slaves, and I have remembered my covenant. Say therefore to the people of Israel, I am the Lord, and I will bring you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians, and I will deliver you from slavery to them, and I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and with great acts of judgment." I want to stop right there before we go on. Just notice the covenant language and more reassurance. He says, "I have heard. I remember my agreement. I will save. I will make you free." And then verse 6 kind of sums it up. "I will free you by my great power." My great power. This was God's rodeo, and he was going to do it. And after it was over, there was going to be no doubt who Yahweh was. Chapter 5, verse 2. Who is this God? You'll know. You'll know. And there's going to be, you won't know any other God like him. You might not worship him, but you're going to know who he is. And so, verse 9, we have Moses' reassurance to the Israelites. He said, "Moses spoke thus to the people of Israel, but they did not listen to Moses because of their broken spirit and harsh slavery." And I understand that. I mean, they're beaten and pushed and beaten and abused and beaten and so, you know what, Moses, you've got us here in this position. So God's response again in verse 10 says, "So the Lord said to Moses, go in, tell Pharaoh king of Egypt to let the people of Israel go out of this land." And we'll keep on reading down. "But Moses said to the Lord, behold, the people of Israel have not listened to me. How then shall Pharaoh listen to me? For I am of uncircumcised lips." But the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron and gave them a charge about the people of Israel, about Pharaoh king of Egypt, to bring the people of Israel out of the land of Egypt. So real quickly, Moses, the reassurance to the Israelites, once again, it's easy to get discouraged when times are tough or when we're going through suffering. We can't see the ending or the daylight because we're in the middle of it. He's discouraged. Things aren't going like he planned. I guess he probably thought he would just roll in there and say, this is what God says, let my people go. Pharaoh's like, okay. It didn't happen that way. It wasn't going to happen that way. That wasn't the plan. And so God responds again, in God's response part 2 in verse 10. He says, go and tell them. Go tell. And then Moses' complaint, he said, they won't listen. And if my own people won't listen, then Pharaoh won't listen. And then he goes again, it's kind of like, he says, I'm of uncircumcised lips. Once again, he's like, I'm not a good speaker. It goes back to the burning bush excuse. Again, Moses is trying to quit his job. I'm not a good communicator does not imply that Moses had a speech problem. We talked about that last time. It literally translates, my lips are uncircumcised, which would reflect not a speech impediment, but it's using metaphorical language of circumcision to say, I'm not ready for public speaking. I found this quote by Tony Merida in a commentary for Exodus. He said, God is looking for reporters, not orators. We do not have to make fine speeches. We just give the news. God is not looking for reporters. God is looking for reporters, not orators. We do not have to make fine speeches. We just have to give the news. That's all he wanted. Just do what I say. Just say this. This is what I'm saying. And so he goes back to chapter 4, 24 through 26, the verse we discussed last week when Zipporah circumcised Gershom with a flint knife to keep God from killing him. If God was willing to kill him for his failure to circumcise his son, maybe God would dismiss him as a prophet for being unwilling to speak to Pharaoh. So once again, he's kind of like, I don't want to do this. I'm discouraged. It's hard. They're not listening. It's not going as planned. I want out. So the next section is Israel's family and genealogy. We won't spend a whole lot of time there, and I'm not going to read all of that. But we looked at genealogies in Genesis, and they're super important. They're super significant. In ancient Eastern writing and culture, a genealogy is of importance. This gives credibility to the authority and ministry of Moses and Aaron. One of the things it does, it links them back to Israel. And some of the names of importance I listed: Reuben, Korah, Amram, Jochebed, Nadab, Abihu, and Phinehas. Not Phineas and Ferb from the cartoon. I don't know if you watched that or not. If your grandkids watch that, or children have watched that, but
I'm aware of it.
You're aware? I've watched it some.
I may have.
I may have watched it a time or two, but yeah. But those are just some important names. The outline, here's a different outline. Verses 14 through 15, if you want to jot this down, it's not in your notes. But the immediate descendants of Reuben and Simeon. That's verses 14 and 15. 16 through 19 are the main families descended from Levi. That's how it's broken down. And then 20 through 27, how Moses and Aaron descended from Amram. And it talks about Aaron and Moses and the sons of Korah. So that's kind of how that genealogy is broke down. But the main takeaways and the significance is it links Moses and Aaron back to Israel through Reuben and Simeon, the firstborn son of Jacob. It also honors Aaron as the true priesthood from the tribe of Levi. Then let me jump down here. I want to skip this part, and I've rearranged my notes, so it's kind of, I got scribbles. It reminds readers that Moses was from a priestly family and tribe. This qualified him to perform priestly duties from time to time, mainly directing the building of the tabernacle. Then the interesting people, let's see, Korah. It shows where Korah, he was a leader of the wilderness rebellion. It shows how he got his claim for leadership in verse 21. The sons of Ishar, Korah, Nepheg, and Zikri. Korah was the one that, called, he called Moses and Aaron out. He says, why are you, we're all got, the Lord's, and we're all, anointed by the Lord, and who are you, to think you're, some big deal. And that's where the showdown, he told them to gather all the tribes and everything, and it didn't end well for him. The ground opened up and swallowed him and his family because he challenged Moses' leadership. Once again, he wasn't challenging Moses, he was challenging God.
Yeah.
And, it didn't end well for him. But that's an important part of the wilderness. And so that's why he's mentioned. Also, Moses and Aaron's parents. Moses' dad married his aunt, which is kind of awkward. But Amram had violated no law, since there was not one yet. Leviticus 18:12 later prohibits such unions. Also, Aaron's family, the importance, the sons Nadab and Abihu, they were killed for disobedience. Leviticus 10. They offered unauthorized fire before the Lord, which he had not commanded. They put incense in their censers, and they offered unauthorized fire. The fire came out and consumed them because of their disobedience. Phineas, if you would, I love the genealogy ends with Aaron's grandson. You don't mess with Phineas. If you look over to Numbers 25, this is like when Israel lived in Shittim, the people began to whore with the daughters of Moab. They invited the people to sacrifices of their God. People ate and bowed down to their gods. So Israel yoked himself to Baal of Peor, and the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel. And the Lord said to Moses, take all the chiefs of the people and hang them in the sun before the Lord, that the fierce anger of the Lord may turn away from Israel. And Moses said to the judges of Israel, each of you kill those of his men who have yoked themselves to Baal of Peor. And behold, one of the people of Israel came and brought a Midianite woman to his family. And in the sight of Moses, and in the sight of the whole congregation of the people of Israel, while they were weeping in the entrance of the tent of meeting, when Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, son of Aaron, the priest, saw it, he rose and left the congregation and took a spear in his hand, went after the men of Israel into the chamber and pierced both of them, the man of Israel and the woman, through her belly. Thus the plague of the people of Israel stopped. Nevertheless, those who died by the plague were 24,000. Not the Phineas and Ferb, but the cartoon. But that was, that's the importance there, and they connect that. And so, anything up to that point? Any other names jump out? It's kind of like an odd place, it's like, well, there's just a genealogy tossed in there. Well, it's important because it's connecting those people. And then you won't really kind of see the significance of the others until later on and when you're in the wilderness and the roles that they played in all of that. All right, we'll move on to number 4.
Was there some point before this where God had said that the Levites were going to be his priestly
that's a good
line,
question,
priestly
Michael.
family? I know from here on they are, from Aaron forward, but
Right. I would have to go back and look. I don't know if it was ever meant. Anybody else know? Because the duties of the tribes and stuff weren't really specifically divvied out until
that's something I've kind of looked for before.
Yeah.
Maybe Levi there was any kind of promise to him made, but it's not something I've never found. I don't know if maybe I missed it or if it just was this, that, you know, was Aaron that made the Levites the.
I can't think of anything prior to that. And I don't know why not the tribe of Dan? You know, why the tribe of Levi? I don't know. That's just who he designated. But it's specifically mentioned, you know, those are the connections.
Yeah.
You know, it's over again, you know, Levi, and the connection to Levi to connect them to the priesthood. Which interesting, you know, in the New Testament, you know, Matthew, Levi. You know, so he went by Matthew, and Matthew Levi, so he was actually from the priest. And I heard someone preaching on this, the calling of Matthew as the disciple, because more than likely, him being from the tribe of Levi, his family probably thought he should have been a priest. And here he was working for the Roman government as a tax collector. And so that whole connection there to the tribe of Levi, I always thought that was kind of an interesting thing. If you look at the disciples, I mean, the other disciples, when they stopped by and said, Matthew, follow me, I mean, there's one guy that is named Simon the Zealot, and he was a revolutionary. I mean, he was the one that wanted to overthrow the government. And, you know, I'm sure if they had bunkmates or they rooming assignments or was sent out 2 by 2, it's just like Jesus to put those two together. You know, it's like you two, it's just such a diverse group of people. But I had never really thought about that Matthew Levi. You know, he pretty much shunned the Levitical priesthood, and he was working for, you know, and then God, you know, Jesus called him. And so that's a pretty cool thing. But we'll go on in chapter 6.
26. 28.
Where are we at? 26?
28.
28. I'm sorry. Thanks, Jeff. On the day when the Lord spoke to Moses in the land of Egypt, the Lord said to Moses, I am the Lord. Tell Pharaoh, king of Egypt, all that I say to you. But Moses said to the Lord, behold, I am of uncircumcised lips. How will Pharaoh listen to me? And so then we'll jump down to chapter 7. And we'll read the first, I've got 6 verses, I think.
Right.
We'll catch 7 too, so it's kind of like just a standalone verse. And the Lord said to Moses, see, I've made you like God to Pharaoh. And that's the second time, and it's not, you're not a God, but you're my representative. You're standing in my place. And so before him, it's like Pharaoh is talking to God. I've made you like God to Pharaoh, and your brother Aaron shall be your prophet, and you shall speak all that I command you, and your brother Aaron shall tell Pharaoh to let the people of Israel go out of his land. But I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and though I multiply my signs and wonders in the land of Egypt, Pharaoh will not listen to you. And then I will lay my hand on Egypt and bring my host, my people, the children of Israel, out of the land of Egypt by great acts of judgment. The Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord when I stretch out my hand against Egypt and bring out the people of Israel from among them. And Moses and Aaron did so. They did just as the Lord commanded them. Now Moses was 80 years old and Aaron 83 years old when they spoke to Pharaoh. So this is the pre-plague. God repeats his call to Moses. Here God is reassuring Moses. He's like, Moses, you're simply a mouthpiece for me. That's all you are. I'm going to do everything. You're just a spokesperson for me. I've made you like God to the king. Moses was not a God or equal to God. Moses was not a God to Israel, but Moses was a representative of God and was going to function as God. You think about that, you know, later on, even in the New Testament, when Jesus comes on, there was Moses worship. You know, Moses did this, or we're descendants of Moses, or we're descendants of Abraham. They elevated the patriarchs to this really high status. You know, Moses dies and nobody knows where he buried. And one of the reasons why I heard that is so people wouldn't dig up his bones and make a shrine to him. you know, because he was so revered, and rightfully so. I mean, he holds a huge place in the history of Israel as a leader, but not to be worshipped. The wording in these verses serve as a reminder to Moses and Aaron that there's only one God, and that is Yahweh. He said, I will make the king stubborn. I will do many miracles. I will be the one that punishes. I will lead my divisions. I will bring them out, and then they will know that I am the Lord. And we find that Moses and Aaron are obedient, and then it lists their age. So I tell you this, you are never too old to serve the Lord and be used by God. And you can't retire. I'm sorry. It's not in there. You know, when you breathe your last breath, when I breathe my last breath, then our work here on this earth is done. But until then, God can use you. And I've been reading through, and I love the story of Caleb. Caleb's like, you know what? I'm in my 80s. And I'm still as strong. I'm still as alert. I'm still as energetic. I'm still the way that I was when God promised me the mountain. I don't want this piece of land. I want the mountain that God gave me. And I will take it because God has promised it to me. And I love that. You know, he's just like, bring it on. And so just know that God, I know people lived a little bit longer back then, but still, you know, you're never too old to serve the Lord and have God do great things through you. Anybody got anything they want to include, offer, insight, questions?
Well, I thought about it last week. You know, one thing, all people, it says, I read somewhere, God doesn't call the equipped. He equips the called.
And that 40 years, you know, 40 years that he was in Midian, you know, was him being prepared to get to that point. That's 40 years. I get kind of impatient, weak. I was kind of like, sometimes I know what he wants me to do, and I'm like, I'm ready to go. And he's like, well, I'm not ready for you to go. There's some things we need to do first. And I'm like, okay.
The more years you live, the more experiences you have, and you can draw on those experiences. God will allow you to draw on those experiences when he calls you to do something. He'll bring those back to your mind and you learn from them. I guess that's what they call wisdom, you know, just comes with age, it just experiences. You know, I've lived probably twice as long as some people in this room, and I've had probably twice as many experiences, you know.
Yeah.
So I think that's how God, he can use an older person because of all that.
And our young couples and the younger people, they need to know, they need to hear those stories. They need you to impart that to them. They need to you know, hear things like that. And I just think that's, you know, sometimes we lose that to just, you know, share those stories and share that wisdom and pour into them when you can. And so, you know, I love it. I still love it. I love when people share their stories, people that are older than me, share their faith stories and how God has used them or how God's brought them through things. I never get tired of hearing those things. Anything else? No. Go ahead and finish.